What's up, Brad? How's it going?
Pete, great. How about yourself?
I am super fantastic. I'm pumped to have you here for Power Hour. As we kind of get some folks trickling in here, would love to hear if you have any big plans for the holidays coming up, man.
Very, very few plans. We knocked all of our obligatory family check-ins out over Thanksgiving, and so we have a little cabin lake house like 2 hours east of Atlanta, and my wife and the dogs, we're all going out there for about 2 weeks. We'll out there like the 23rd and probably come back right after New Year's.
Oh man, that's awesome. Wait, how many pugs is it these days that you've got?
We're at three. We had
Oh, okay.
sad to say we had our OG. We had to say goodbye to him earlier this year. He was 18, but
Oh
lived
my
a
goodness.
yeah, he lived a solid pug life. Don't get me wrong, but no, we're down to three. You'll hear him bark around here somewhere at some point tonight.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, I think we're gonna be I think what's pretty much on the agenda for the holidays for us is gonna be as I was noting earlier, kind of an ungodly number of Legos for my 5-year-old. Right,
Dude,
that's like pretty much how we roll. Awesome. So let's get jamming here. So everybody, welcome to Power Hour. For those who are not familiar, Power Hour is kind of a unique format. We're not really here to go through a specific piece of content. We're here to pick the brains of the people that we have here, our sales and revenue operations leadership that are here to educate us. For those who are not familiar, Power Hour is hosted by Modern Sales Pros. MSP is the world's largest revenue leadership community for those in sales management, sales and revenue operations, sales development, and related discipline. So the community's mission is to create an environment for our 30,000 and growing members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own, help them see around corners they may not know about. We do that through live grade sessions like what you're about to experience here, through our online forum and in-person events. And for those who were not previously admitted, you should now have access to the community. Before we get started, a couple reminders. Power Hour is very Q&A focused. We have some questions that were submitted ahead of time, but for folks who weren't previously, excuse me, and instead what we're doing is we're picking the brain of folks who are here to educate us, like Brad here. So you're here to learn. Please do use that Q&A. We're pumped to have you there. So, let's go ahead and like pop into some introductions here. I'll make mine super quick. I'm Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of MSP and Atrium, and I lead our GTM efforts over here at Atrium. I'm even more excited about our guest today. So, Brad's a MSP OG. In fact, he's actually wearing his MSP MVP Patagooch from 2018, which is pretty amazing. Brad, maybe you can share a little bit about your experience, kind of what you spend your time doing at Sonar, and what you worked on before at Terminus and what have you. Yeah, after you.
totally, Pete. I appreciate it. It's funny. I was pulling the jacket out of the closet, and my wife was like, "You're such a hoarder. That's from 2018." I was like, "Hey, this is one of my favorite jackets. This thing's not going anywhere." So,
I know
no,
it's well back in the day before you had your own software company, and now you're probably like just like covered in like Sonar stuff. But in this case, it was like, oh man, I can't get rid of that MSP MVP. Right?
dude, it was a hot commodity. I remember rocking this thing at Dreamforce that same year, and I was like, "Where'd you get that?" I was
Ooh,
like,
are
"Man,
you an MSP MVP?
dude,
Ooh.
you gotta know the right people, man. You gotta know Gina. You gotta know Pete. You gotta know Angela.
Right.
You gotta know them all. That's how you get in. No, I'm pumped to be here as always. I love supporting MSP, supporting Atrium. Pete, you and I go way back. Yeah, excited to be here. I guess a little bit about myself. Again, prior to starting Sonar, kind of see it on screen. I was with Terminus, Accenture, Gather. Spent a lot of my time, the biggest focus area of my time, on go-to-market operations, both internally running operations. Well before the fun buzzword of revenue operations was out there, I was doing that. I think my longest title was professional services operations manager
That's a
for
long one.
Accenture. That was a long one. I just called it ops manager. I just dropped the
There you
PS
go.
part. But no, my whole background centered around the Salesforce ecosystem to start, but just as important to that, operationalizing how businesses run, and of course now doing that at Sonar. We started this 5 years ago now, which is kind of wild to think. Pete, you've been with us along the way the whole time.
Has it
You are
really
my
been that long? Jeez
it's kind of
Louise. Time
kind of
flies,
wild, isn't
yo.
it? I know.
Jeez.
I know, but I'll tell you this. Shout out to you. Obviously, I still read my founding sales book religiously. It's on my desk, it's back in the office at the house. So, yeah, you've been along the journey the whole time. But yeah, a lot of my focus centered around ops excellence. How do we make sure that our teams are running smoothly, efficiently, and maximizing for growth? So here we are.
I love it. Awesome. Well, with that, let's go ahead and get started here. I think probably like one thing that folks that I always try to bring up when I'm talking with um, founders of software companies who previously were in sales operations or previously were sales leaders. What has kind of been the biggest change of pace when moving from RevOps to starting your own software company? Like what was the biggest surprise? What was the biggest adjustment? What of your prior role actually prepared you for the current role, which might be a little counterintuitive? What do you think?
Yeah, I tell people often. I'm a firm believer. If you want to throw a massive prediction out there, I think you're going to see a ton of RevOps folks with that sort of background go and
Oh,
be founders one day.
I buy that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I will say there are parts of this journey that I know I would not be able to do without having that background. And I think when you boil it down one extra layer, RevOps is supporting all of your go-to-market. So you're getting
Yep.
exposure to marketing, sales, success, finance, services, onboarding, offboarding. You're watching the revenue dollars cycle all the way through your business. That prepares you immensely to go be a founder. Obviously, you have so much inherent knowledge of even how a campaign works in marketing, how you think about dunning and billing, and oh, what is that net 30 or net 45 term? Oh, that's right. I've configured that before in Salesforce. I know how my previous businesses ran that. So I tell people often that I think that role and that background prepares you really well for founding a company. I'd be remiss if I didn't say I am so grateful for my co-founder's background, which is product and engineering. That is something rarely that RevOps gets to go and experience. And so when you think about starting a company, part of that first question was where were the blind spots or what was some of the struggles with it? Learning how to be a PM and learning how product management and engineering goes. I remember, man, we weren't even 10 people yet. I remember we were in Slack one day and some of our engineers were asking questions and I just jump right into the engineering channel and start responding. And Jack calls me or pulls me aside. He's like, dude, you don't give engineers that type of feedback. They're gonna see that and they're gonna see the CEO saying like, ooh, maybe make this thing this color or maybe build this functionality, and they're gonna flip the table upside down and they're gonna focus on that because you said it. I was like, I would have never thought that. It's like, yeah, engineers are very literal. They are going to build. If you say something, they're going to build it. That's their job. It's like, so do me a favor. Don't take them off track too bad by just giving your like small feedback. Ooh, add this tick list value or change this color or maybe this should be the click path. Don't do that anymore. I was like, noted. I won't do it anymore.
Which I think is kind of like, I don't know, it's funny. It's a little bit of like turnabout is fair play sort of situation where you can imagine like when you were doing RevOps at Terminus or kind of prior to that, you have like shiny object syndrome where like some sales manager or some sales leader is like, well, what about XYZ? Or like, can you like do this? And like pretty soon you've like used up all your fields on a given object and nobody actually knows like, and none of them are being used and so on and so forth. One of the things that I like to say about sales operations is that it's really helpful to have like a product management mindset in sales operations where it's like, hey, like an organization, a sales organization has lots of bugs and lots of potential features that could be built, and you can't do them all in parallel. It's just not possible. Like there's only so many of you and like so many hours in the day. And so prioritizing things that are highest priority first, right? So like highest potential impact or removing like the highest levels of pain removing highest levels of pain. And then also looking at, level of effort, right? So like where can you get the biggest bang for your buck for like the minimum amount of investment and what have you, ends up being a very powerful thing. How have you seen that kind of impact how you guys have gone about building Sonar.
Oh yeah. I remember actually, I think you gave me this advice many years ago. It is so easy to go so broad and to remove your own blinders and just start to hear product feedback or hear from some of your first couple of customers, which you embrace, you hug them, you keep them so close. You obviously always want to keep them close by and have their feedback going. But one of the challenges there is, how do you constructively take their feedback, but also tell them no? Because if you aren't able, you're not able to fulfill everything for everyone. You're right. You don't have nearly as many hours in a day as you think. You can't over prioritize and shuffle the deck every time of what that next big rock is or what that next big feature is. So one thing you learn really quickly is how to politely say no and how to poetically say no, or restructure that no into a, yeah, we'll get to that. But I mean, I learned more
That's a great
from
idea.
Jack. That's a great idea. We should solve for that. You know what? World hunger's out there too. We should probably go knock that one out while we're doing it. But I don't know. Jack taught me a lot of that though. It's like how to go be curious with your customer and understand that product management 101. Go ask why a million times. And if you finally get to the root cause of what that why looks like, maybe position yourself around how to go build something. But that was one of the hardest lessons I had to learn was, rev ops people in general, rev ops, sales ops, marketing ops. I'm just gonna keep bucking them all into operations. In our DNA is say yes. You want to be an enabler. Like you are removing roadblocks. You're building new processes, new automations, new ways of thinking so that you can go accomplish your job. So just inherently, you want to say yes. That is a different way. You have to think way different than that when you're running a company. You become way more of a no person than a yes person. And how you structure that no, how you enroll people, even when you're politely telling them no, has been a big learning lesson throughout the years of doing it. But if you don't, again, you're going to spread yourself too thin, and you're not actually going to provide value.
Isn't there a good lesson there for being an effective RevOps person? Because like if you only have one of you and so many hours and what have you, shouldn't you really be saying no a lot more, or poetically, as you have been saying, like, shouldn't you be saying no a lot more? Shouldn't you be doing that poetically? You know what? That's a really great idea. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the Trello board or the Asana tracker or what have you. And then when we circle things up again in, in 80 days from now, because we just started like our sprint process here, like we'll totally bring that back to the top, and we'll kind of present back to the organization the things that we're thinking about doing and how we can help with that. Yeah, it kind of feels like that would be, you'd have a lot of, sales operations people oftentimes talk about how they're getting pulled in a bajillion directions, and we get this with Atrium, right? We're one of the key use cases for sales operations people is like, oh my God, I'm getting pulled in so many directions. I got board support, I got CRO support. If you're telling me that you can enable my managers, like I can enable my managers to manage by metric by just like getting Atrium for them, okay, wonderful. That takes a big like load off my plate. But I wonder to what extent that like RevOps people kind of like do it to themselves by like taking on more and more and more and more, and like allowing themselves to like have their attention pulled all over the place.
That has been one of the coolest conversations. That's probably one of the most exciting parts of my job. I just get to sit here and jam out with ops professionals all day long. So I ask a lot of these same questions, like, how are you even architecting and structuring the way that you go about your daily business? How are you communicating that? Because the biggest thing, especially as you've seen this wave of RevOps happen, is yes, we support all of go-to-market, but how do we communicate all that effectively? And just because we support all of it, that doesn't mean that I have the autonomy sometimes to over prioritize or under prioritize certain departments, KPIs or OKRs or anything else. Better said, you've got a marketing leader coming at you one day and saying, you've got to go fix this integration with our marketing automation platform. Your success leaders come in the same day saying our success platforms, I need 3 more checkboxes and 5 more pick list values, et cetera. And you can go department by department with this. I think the thing that people are learning now, and you mentioned a few of these just now, that if you don't have a rigorous structure inside of it, you're going to be backpedaling the whole time. And I'll tell you, 10 years ago, when I was starting in my ops world and journey, we weren't talking about how do I go effectively use Trello or Asana, or how do I structure my sprints. Sprints were not a thing in the operations world back when I started with it. You've just seen this evolve so quickly into taking some of these best practices and sort of first principles from product management, engineering, and bake them into it. We have more of our customers now using Jira than anything else, just to keep their tickets up and moving and keep their boards going. And so you're seeing that more now than I think you were way back in the day. And I think that's the right move. This is a true department. This is a true function. Treat it as such. Like, it should be meticulously planned. It shouldn't be ad hoc. You shouldn't be going into production and create a new workflow rule or process builder randomly on a Wednesday afternoon. So
I mainly do those on Saturday. I mainly do that on Saturday morning, actually.
I know you do, because I can see when some of those get created.
Well, so changing gears a little bit. So I think what's funny is that we're just talking about, having more like sales operations, revenue operations, having more intentional rigor around like what it is that they're going to be spending their time doing. Like, these are the projects that we're doing, these are the projects that we're not doing, those sort of things. Well, like, let's kind of flip it around a little bit, because us as like vendors and sellers, oftentimes what we're trying to do is lead folks to doing the thing that, like we would like them to do. Now, obviously it ought to align with the things that they care about, or maybe ought to care about. Like, we reveal to them, like, oh, actually, you thought that these were these priorities, but now that I know that this new thing exists, man, maybe I should pull that to the top of my priority list. And so get people to like kind of have that realization seems like a, kind of a fraught exercise. What are the kind of biggest lessons that you've learned when selling to revenue operations and sales operations, and trying to like garner that attention and kind of pull your priority to the top of the list, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. This question evolves a lot. I've always asked it, the years as we've been selling Sonar and bringing it into companies. If you, as an operations person, simple math, you're on a whiteboard, draw a big circle, your day is divided into two big segments: strategic and tactical. So if we're on this fun whiteboard experiment, how would you wedge that out? Where would you subdivide that? How much of your time is actually being spent being strategic versus being tactical? And I don't know, I'm curious, I'll ask you this. What do you think the common answer is? What do you think the normal divide of tasks that they go through?
It's all tactical, right? Like, it's all just getting pulled in. Then like, yeah, exactly. Like, it's people just getting pulled into fires and so on and so forth, right? And yeah, I could totally imagine like being a Sonar seller and being like, yeah, like, hey, do me a favor, like, why don't we just go like look at your calendar for last week? Like, how much of that was you got deep work time on ABC, et cetera, versus someone slacking you and be like, can you do this, can you do this, can you do this, or things breaking and then you had to like jump on them, et cetera, right?
Absolutely. And you can reframe that or go one layer deeper if you want and say, let's do the same exercise with proactive versus reactive. Same result. Nobody ever is working nearly as proactive as they want. They're backpedaling, they're putting fires out. And so we challenge our customers all the time. Like, if you were to go do this exercise of yourself and look at your 40, 50, 60 plus hours you're working a week, like, how is your time? We know what your time is worth. I mean, you can back into what your hourly rate looks like. We know how valuable you are as a resource, but if all you're doing is reactive work, how is the company growing? You've got big goals, big initiatives. Like, when do you have time to go do that? And of course, on the reason we ask that question, we give you that visibility into how your systems are working together so that you can actually architect them the right way and not have to backpedal. Maybe take one step forward and then take the second step forward instead of one step forward and 10 steps back. So there's a lot of reason why we ask that question, but just as a whole on the operations world, you ask any rev ops, sales ops, marketing ops person, if you were to snap your fingers, wave a magic wand, what would your pie chart look like? Like, oh, it'd be at least 90% strategic and 10% tactical. I've got to do it.
It'd be amazing.
Right. It's like, okay, great. Well, all right, wake up, Peter Pan. We're going to get out of fairy tale land and we're going to go back to normal. But what if you just told me right now, yours is the inverse of that? You're 90% tactical and 90% responsive or reactive instead of proactive. how do we flip that? How do we even move that needle by 5%? And I can tell you what 5% of your worth is. Like when you look at your annual salary, you look at 10% of your worth, you look at your salary and everything else. So how do we just move that needle by a couple percentage points? Let's start somewhere. And that's when we start to pull back the layers of the onion and understand, oh, this tactical thing, if I built it the right way the first time, I wouldn't have this problem many times down the
Right.
road. The reason why you couldn't build it the first time the right way, you didn't have the right visibility, you couldn't scope it the right way. So that's how we push the value of that. But even, Sonar hat off and just operations fanboy hat on, it's a tough role. And I will tell you
Yep.
this to all the ops folks listening, a lot of people are sold some false bill of goods sometimes when they sign up for this job.
Yeah.
Like, they're going through interview process, like, man, you're going to be the most strategic resource at this business. You're going to help, redefine how our ACVs double for next year. And we're going to decrease our sales cycles by 20%. You're going to be the one pioneering all that. And you wake up like 6 months later, they're like, how's that going? Like, well, I don't have validation rules breaking, I guess, nearly as much. And add
Yeah.
new users to Salesforce. Like, oh, you're a glorified admin. Got it. And so that's something that's also getting fixed, in the process of this. But I don't know, I encourage all of our ops folks, be optimistic through that. Instead of complaining about that, be a pioneer to go fix it. Like, and
Yeah.
be a leader to it.
Yeah. I think the kind of the key thing there is grab a hold of them and say like, hey, especially this is, and then the next question I want to ask about is kind of new category creation. But when you have a situation where people may not be familiar with like the art of the possible and the fact that this like piece of software or solution exists in such a way that can help this, you have to, reveal that to them and then give them an opportunity to pull that to the front of their priority list. I think there's a couple of different ways you can do that. One thing that you were just describing right there is like, this is something, and this works for your solution in particular. I think actually Atrium, anytime like you have an automation sort of situation, that kind of helps with that. Like, hey, the thing that's gating you from doing these big priorities is these fires that keep coming up. Similarly with like Atrium, it's like, hey, there's a bunch of things you're supposed to be taking care of. You're supposed to be deploying CPQ. You're supposed to be deploying lead routing or whatever. The problem is you're getting eaten alive by all of these managers who are constantly like, hey, can you give me this report? And hey, why is this then? And like, and so revealing that they now will be able to get to those priorities because they're not getting eaten alive by all these little tasks ends up being a powerful approach. I think the other thing though, just from a product design standpoint, and then also a sales motion standpoint, is to the extent that you can make it easy and fast, can really help with that in a meaningful fashion. And like we've put a bunch of engineering resources into making it such that Atrium takes like 5 minutes to set up an Atrium account. It's like super fast. It's a 5-minute read-only connection to your CRM, and like poof, you're on your merry way. Which is why we frequently enter through sales managers and sales development, where they're kind of like, yeah, you know what? I had this hysterical conversation with this like VP of enterprise sales from a pretty big sales organization the other day, where he's like, yeah, the reason why we bought one of your competitors, it's like kind of now defunct, was because I was waiting on sales operations to make me these reporting assets, and literally I had to wait like 2 years and they still hadn't gotten to it. So I just wrangled my own budget to go and buy this ancillary thing. And so to the extent that you can make something really fast for folks to get to utility quickly, that can be very powerful. Like the time to, and I imagine that's the case with Sonar, where it's like, hey man, like I get that I get this narrative that you're spinning around how this is going to remove some of the brain damage that eats me alive. Okay, well, like show me. And then I think in you guys' case, it's like, yeah, we can. Here, just go ahead and like off into this, and like poof, you now see like the various workflow rules or like process builders or whatever that are broken, and so on and so forth, right?
Totally. I think that people don't know what they don't know. Kind of an age-old adage there, but especially if you're starting new in a role and you don't know how a system or an entire go-to-market tech stack's been architected, you are totally flying blind. I have destroyed more systems and data and reports by not knowing what I didn't know and going to make a configuration change. And the next morning I woke up, true story, when I was at Terminus, nuked out $18 million in recurring revenue. So we went from 18 million in ARR at the time to 0 million in ARR at the time. that's a high risk to go take when you don't know what changes you're making. And so it's funny, I tell that story all the time to ops folks when we jump on, or I jump into sales cycles or just connect with our customers, and they're like, yeah, it's a longer winded
And
story, but I'll give
they're
you the abbreviated one. Well,
been
they're just
there,
sitting there
done
like,
that.
yeah, they're like nodding and smiling. I get done telling my story, and they're like, haha, that's cool, Brad. Hold my beer. Let me tell you mine. Because
Yeah.
everybody's had that like sort of oh shit moment on it. But you kind of
Hold my beer.
remind, yeah, literally they'll say that word for word. But we picked this up from you with Atrium too. Is like, how quickly can you go and show value? So we're in that same motion.
Yeah.
Like, go hook Sonar up as soon as we've synced everything down from Salesforce. Takes 5 to 10 minutes, maybe a little longer, depending how big your org is. Then you're going to quickly see how fast and how maybe messed up your Salesforce org is. And look, most folks that we talk to never have had the luxury of turning the lights on from day one of their Salesforce org. And so for us to be able to highlight, hey, did you know you got these automations that are referencing broken code or pieces of metadata that aren't even active anymore? That validation rule you built to capture closed lost information will never fire because you have it referencing an old stage that is not even active. Like those are the.
That sounds like something that I would do.
I'll plead the fifth for you on that one, since I can actually see some of that with Atrium. But no, I will say, I tell folks all the time, and I used to make this bet, like when I was doing a lot of founder selling, like very early on with Sonar, I would make bets with them, and it's like, how many broken pieces of automation do you think you have? You can give me a percentage, and we'll back into it, but be careful, because whatever the delta is of that percentage, you're decreasing any chance of discount you're ever going to get with our platform. I was like, but if you're right, I'll honor that discount. And most of the time, folks just don't know. Again, even if you've been there for a couple of years, like we've had a couple of our enterprise customers where their CRM managers have been there 5-6 years, and they did help stand it up originally. And I think the crux of all of it is really hard to document every single one of those changes you're making. And do you want to go spend 5 minutes going to update an old stale document to say, hey, I added a new competitor to my pick list value? No, that's not that great. But if you don't do that time over time, and then somebody new comes on your team, well, nobody writes shit down. Like, documentation's not fun. I'll raise my hand and say that. I was terrible at documentation when I was running ops and doing consulting work. But it's needed. And if you don't write it down the right way, or you don't document it the right way, you will go make a mistake that will cost you, your business, time, effort, energy, money, which is ultimately what you don't want to do. So
I think this is like one of the reasons why you guys just shipped a new product. So I don't know how you guys are like characterizing the two deltas, right? There's like, Sonar kind of like change management, or software, and then of course you guys, I think you just shipped a new data dictionary capability as well, which I think is kind of related to that other thing there. But it's not just like, hey, you can update this, but it's like literally a data dictionary that updates itself, right?
It is. We interviewed all of our customers, all the market, just trying to understand better how we could make this less painful for folks. And so at its core, you go talk to a lot of people that try to roll out a data dictionary. Most will tell you, we started doing it, spun up a new Google sheet. I went object by object and the fields inside of it for rows. And my team just forgot to go update it. And then somebody asked me during an audit or something, because we're all now going through such rigorous compliance audits now. Like, we have to be able to identify what fields are being used in what systems. And if you don't, Meta just got fined $275 million last week for breaking GDPR compliance. And so, this stuff hits the fan pretty quickly. So, but we asked a lot of people, like, what does this look like for you? Like, it's an old static spreadsheet, or we used to keep it up in Confluence, but nobody updates it anymore. So that was the pain point. True story. You'll really appreciate this, especially, and anybody from a sales management perspective will appreciate this. Earlier this year, we shifted some of our marketing message to use the term data dictionary. And our SDRs were setting tons of meetings, our AEs were setting tons of meetings, but not many of them were getting past the second stage in our funnel. And you and I looked at this through Atrium. We're big Atrium fans over here, bought it 3 times. But we looked at it, we're like, well, what's going on here? Is the message not landing? Is it not the right solution? And go back and look at and listen to some of the recorded calls. And everybody looked at this is our previous version of this. They look at it and like, I see why, you call this a data dictionary, but it's not exactly what I expected. So we found a couple of really cool things there. The pain point's real. People got excited about wanting to sign up for something like this. We just didn't have the right product to put in front of them at the time. And one of the coolest things, I'll give them a shout out right now. Corey Gayer from 6 Sense, one of our customers, he came to us like, I know y'all use data dictionary as terminology. Like, we're really happy customers. Here's what we have. Any chance you could help us automate this? And we walked through it, line by line. He showed us his data dictionary, and it was a spreadsheet that him and Praveen, his counterpart in India, they updated, sort of ships crossing in the night. They updated occasionally, but Praveen was even saying, I was spending 12 hours. Our team was spending 12 hours a week just trying to keep this updated. I was like, guys, we've got this. So we partnered with them, spent about 2.5 months developing. Just launched it yesterday. That's why I was in Indianapolis seeing him for our launch and celebrating and going to dinner. But he even was saying, like, the fact that this now gets automated, I'm now giving 12 hours back to my team. I don't have to worry about the risk of an auditor coming in and saying, hey, is that field being used in Marketo right now? Or is it in 6 Sense? Or, oh crap, that's a GDPR specific field. Are we going to get fined right now? It's all staying up to date, and we're tracking all those changes that go through it. We wouldn't have been able to have that aha moment if he didn't kind of present it with us, but also come along the journey with us and be our champion of the build. He was jumping on every other week with our engineering team, like looking at the sprints, looking at the designs, and actually helping us build and mold it. And so, yeah, super excited to get it out, but it's still a pain point out there. People are doing it manually. Manual tasks suck. We know that. That's why we have software out here, right?
Yeah, and then I think one thing that is, I think there's another interesting thing here too, which is like the concept of a data dictionary is a well trodden concept. So the now it's a pain in the ass, but I think a potential fascinating thing there is you guys kind of have like two products going on. You got one thing that's like change management, right? And that's like a new category, that's a new thing, et cetera, and so like revealing to people that they have that need, and like this is something that they like ought to be a capability within the organization, is like a little bit more of a like pushing something uphill, whereas like, hey, that you're supposed to be doing this thing right here, it's just like a really crappy way of doing it, and we just automated that oftentimes that can land a lot faster. Now oftentimes it's a lot more obvious. I wonder, when you think about like creating the category of change management for low code software or revenue tech software or whatever, which is what Sonar essentially is. What are the kind of the biggest lessons that, and I think it's probably too early to tell with respect to the data dictionary stuff, but what have been the biggest lessons and kind of the biggest struggles there that you've had to surmount, and like what would be the recommendations that you would give to other folks who are listening?
Oh, category creation, while fun and exciting, is a challenge in and of itself. I tell our team this when we bring on new folks. I'm giving them backstories to how we came up with the idea, what we're doing. I actually relate it back to two other really big pioneering companies that created categories, Uber and Airbnb. And there's a not to say that we are Uber or Airbnb by any means. We have a long way to go to get to that caliber, but think about the early struggles that they went through, right? Think about just the messaging. Think about how hard it is to nail down what your value prop is and go articulate it. What was some of the early value prop, or what was some of the early messaging in Airbnb? Hey bro, that hotel over there is expensive as hell. Just sleep on my couch, man. It's easy. That's a terrible message. That sounds creepy. Like, what, sleep on my couch instead of going to a hotel? What? The same thing with Uber. It's like, oh my God, that cab is so expensive and it takes forever to get here. Hey bro, just jump in my back seat. It's totally fine. Like, no, I'm not getting in the car with a stranger. That's creepy too. And so you have to refine some messaging. So anybody out there that's thinking about category creation, like, you have to articulate it. And you also have to remember that message will change overnight, and it'll change overnight again. What you're building right now is not going to be the same as what you're building in 6 months. The value might still be the same, but how you articulate it is very, very different. We struggled with that. I mean, I've told you about using the term data dictionary even earlier this year, where our product wasn't truly showing what our users wanted it to be. It was our interpretation, but it wasn't theirs. And so you bend and you mold to what your customers need. That's a tough one. Kind of down to brass tacks. Two other big points of it. If you're trying to create a category, that's great. You can go to your leading analyst firms and some of your review boards like G2. Love G2. They're a customer of ours. We're a customer of theirs. You go to talk to them from our customer perspective saying, hey, y'all don't have a change intelligence category. Let's just go ahead and create that. That is not okay, cool, you're right. Y'all are in that category. You can be in a category by yourself. It's a pretty rigorous process. You have to go show them 8 other competitors. You have to show a ton of data. And so there's times like that where it's like, you have to be at the same pace as the market to understand that category is there. Come to fruition now. That category is showing up now in a lot of different analyst perspectives, like Gartner's all about it. Obviously G2 and a couple other folks are too. The last thing that I would share on category creation, while pioneering this route, one of the hardest parts is pricing through that. When you don't have direct competition, you might have kind of Venn diagram style. You might have a little bit of overlapping competition, but not a ton. It is really hard sometimes to price out because I always use a joke with kind of Kyle and Manny. Sales Loft and Outreach have been competitors for years, and they thrive off that. They compete heavily with each other, and they kind of know each other's battle cards to a degree. But that also helps the user buy something when you're in a buying cycle and you kind of don't have something else to go up against. Sometimes that can be a hard thing for a buyer to swallow. And they'd be like, you don't have a competition? Is this really a big pain point? Is it something that you really have to have? And so you have to have your messaging down pat to understand, you're right, this is new. Airbnb was new a while ago, and now it's all a household name. Like, just have to be comfortable going into these new categories and understanding the value that it's bringing, not necessarily apples to apples everything. But it's a journey, man.
I know. I mean, I think when I had a similar conversation with Nick Mehta from Gainsight on at the last MSP virtual summit, and we were just talking about like things to kind of help with category creation. And I think it's like one thing that you really have to do is it's not just reveal how your problem or like your product solves the problem in question. You really have to like popularize the problem, right? As much as possible. And so that just means like being a broken record. I mean, doing tons and tons of webinars, like content up the wazoo, ideally like scalable in some sort of capacity, those sort of things. And so just making sure that like you're just constantly like proselytizing the pain point is a really critical thing to do.
Totally. And I learned this within that first year of doing this. The pain point that you solve for is very near and dear to your user. That might not be the exact same pain point to your buyer. So if you're in a user and a buyer mentality where like we go bottoms up, we do go talk to Salesforce admins, RevOps managers, folks like that are really rolling their sleeves up. Sometimes that authority level to go purchase something is above them. They reported to CROs, CEOs, CFOs, COOs. And you can't, I'll tell you this, as a guy who's built tons of automation and tons of configuration in Salesforce, I can go eye to eye with folks and understand why flows are better than process builders, or why validation rules break, or data loads are really tough, and here's why. It's really hard to go push that same pain point to a CFO. They don't care about the syntax of a validation rule. They don't even know what that means. They've hired somebody to go manage that. So you have to be able to articulate the why in a different manner. You'll appreciate this. I think I've told you this one before. A fun part of our jobs is we get to go do executive alignment, right? So if, for our example, if sales ops or rev ops rolls into a CRO, I'm going to go try to grab 15 minutes with that CRO and help them understand why this is valuable to them. And I always use the same fun analogy. I tell them, hey, it's the last day of the quarter. Look down this part of the row of everybody in your office. That's your sales side. That's all your AEs. You got that one AE down there that hit 99% of their quota. What's your sentiment to them? And of course, you have some of them that are over bullish or like, I'm mad that they didn't hit 100. I was like, now you're lying. I know you sandbagged your number probably to 80%. They're still helping you out. Hit your greater number. Like, you don't have to lie to me. We're good. But I was like, but let's be honest with each other. A rep that's going to go hit 99% of quota, you're probably going to go give them a high five. And you're going to say, like, this is a good quarter. I know you didn't get to 100. We can get you there next quarter, but I'm really proud of your effort. You did a great job. You helped me hit our overall bigger number, right? It's like, great. We're in alignment there. You're probably going to give them a high five. Look down the other aisle at your RevOps person who's supporting that entire team. And you've set their KPIs or OKRs to do 2 or 3 things. They need to roll out Atrium, they need to redesign their territory model, and they need to implement Outreach or SalesLoft or Groove or anything on some. Those are all customers, so I get to stay
fill in the blank.
Right. Yeah, fill in the blank. I get to be very Switzerland in that one because we work with all of them already. But if you look down there, they complete 2 of the 3, but they don't get that outreach implementation done. What's your sentiment? Are you giving them a high five? Are you giving them a stern talking to because they didn't get to the finish line? And regardless of where they are in between, they're not giving them a high five. They're probably not going to be a total jerk to them, but it paints a picture that their goals are different than your sales team's goals. They're binary. If we're not getting our work done, it's a 1 or a 0. We either got it done or we didn't. And you are giving them accolades or you're giving them variable comp or whatever it is if they get their job done. Give them more time back in their day. Let them architect and orchestrate that tech stack the way you need it so that that last part of that project gets done. Them getting an outreach implementation and 99% done doesn't really help you. Your teams, you've already made an investment there. Your team is not getting able to use it yet. Like, they need the ability to get this stuff done on time for you so that your go-to-market team can work faster, smarter, and bring in new revenue. And every time like I get that conversation done with like a CRO, especially, they're like, yeah, I get it. Just let's keep moving forward. I understand now. Goals are different, but that is an enlightening moment for a lot of folks. I think it's important for people to understand goals are different for that type of persona, and you've got to be able to get your shit done. Full stop.
Yeah, I think you kind of remark on an interesting thing there, which is that part of the RevOps person's goals is like feeding and watering and potentially enhancing the sales operation, or sorry, the sales tech stack, which is obviously growing, right? And maybe expanding pretty substantially because like there's a couple of different things going. There's like a yin and a yang, kind of like a push me pull me situation. Like there's entrepreneurs who are constantly identifying new use cases, and there's entrepreneurs who are constantly identifying new use cases and new ways of like solving problems that create inefficiency in an organization, or either unlock more revenue growth or what have you. On the flip side, there's incumbents who are looking to add that functionality into their suite of solutions or what have you. And so you kind of have that like push me pull me situation. But like how do you garner attention in an environment where there's just like so many different solutions? Like MarTech's a great example of that, even more so than sales tech. And of course, sales tech is expanding, pretty substantially as well. What's your kind of point of view on like how to like drive attention when selling into that space? And then also kind of what do you see happening with that kind of like sprawling tech stack? Like, will it consolidate into a smaller set of vendors? Will it continue to proliferate and kind of just cluster around the marketing automation database and the CRM as a database? Like, where does that go?
That's a probably a couple $1 billion worth of a question all packed into one right there from a market perspective.
Yeah.
I'll start here. We actually just ran a survey through all of our customers and our WizOps community. So just to level set what that tech stack that you're talking about looks like, on average, again, this is kind of across all segments of life and all stages of companies, the average go-to-market tech stack includes 40 plus pieces of technology. And on average, a Salesforce admin or whoever is in charge of making these configuration changes are making 450 plus changes per month. So just to stay there for a second, to understand how the tech stack is even working, how it's evolving, who's owning it, who's changing it. It's got a lot of moving parts. I mean, you're relying on a ton of different technology to get your job done, and you're relying on one or many people to configure that the right way and constantly configure it. It's not, don't go configure it one time and let it kind of be on autopilot. That's never the case. Like 450 plus metadata configuration changes per month. That's a lot of moving parts. So to anyone, I think the first part of that question was really to anybody that is trying to sell into that or to become technology piece number 41 or 42. And obviously, you know your value props, know how it is that you are impacting a customer journey and that user's journey. That's just day one type expectations. Like you have to know the pain points in and out. You have to know why your solution is the best one for them. But I think the more fun and probably kind of gnarly conversation is where does it go from here? Because you're right, there is an influx of technology. You're seeing more companies come out daily with new solutions. Some are overlapping, some are unique and new. I'm in the belief that you'll still find new entrepreneurs similar to you and I that have walked really hard miles, that have had pain points, that want to go solve them. And so I don't think the narrative of creating new software or solving problems will ever go away. With what our current GTM stack looks like and consolidation efforts perhaps, or acquisition efforts perhaps, or just overall, like, do we have too much technology in our hands and do we need to condense or compress some of that? You're kind of already seeing some of it. And I think, candidly, you're seeing it with one of them already with, you know, what Henry and ZoomInfo is doing. You've seen some of the strategic acquisitions they're going through. You've seen some of the strategic acquisitions that Salesforce is going through. I'll challenge you to think a different way. Does that acquisition check 90% of the market, 80% of the market, 70% of the market by that consolidation? I don't know. I think every business is different. Everybody is trying new strategies now. And I think that's why you're going to continue to see more technology come out to go solve those. You know what we weren't talking about 3-4 years ago? PLG related technologies. And now you've got tons of that. CDP wasn't really a conversation until the last 5 or 6 years. Change intelligence wasn't a conversation until the last 2 or 3. So I think it's going to be a famous Pete Kazanji line, skate towards the puck. You're going to find how things are changing. You're going to find new solutions for them. But I do think at a aggregate level, at a whole level, you will probably see some consolidation across technology in the coming years, months. This is a market where that will actually probably happen often. You look at the market conditions we're in, I think you're going to see some strategic M&A pieces. You're going to see some strategic PE positions that turn into M&A positions. Buckle up, man. Keep your seatbelt on. It's going to be a fun ride for the next couple of years, right?
Yeah, no kidding. So I think that I think I would tend to agree with that. I think the I don't think, like, when I talk with investors about these sort of things and people are like, yeah, you know, they're like, man, there's so many things that people have, you know, in their tech stack, like it's crazy, right? The amount of sprawl. And like my kind of reaction to that is, like, if you think about like a seller, right? And their quota, whether it's like 600K or 800K or $1 million or like, you know, whatever it is, to the extent that we can make them more effective, right, and drive more utility, there's always going to be a market opportunity for that, right? Like, I'll give you an example, like Atrium customer, User Gems, right? Makes, like, you know, it's another craft portfolio company, make like really sweet software that allows you to track like where your former users are going. Because if someone's like, I mean, use Sonar as an example, we do this like crazy with Atrium, right? So when somebody gets it and they're just like an Atrium acolyte and they're like, oh man, like I'm in there multiple times a day and I'm using it in all my one-on-ones in order to understand what's happening with my reps and how to coach them up and like where the hiccups are, so on and so forth. In those situations, you really, really want to hold on to that person. That didn't exist like 3 years ago. Would you like want to forego that? Like, you know, you've got your and the way that we do this right now is we have all of our users in Salesforce as contact objects, and then we use Census to send usage data in there. So when somebody hits a certain usage threshold, it actually flips a formula field to signify that they got to critical usage capacity. So like that's probably a pretty good bet that they were stoked on Atrium. And so then what ends up happening is the user gem software then goes ahead and like just tracks them. And so it's like if they depart the organization, like we get information as to somebody like departs the organization and we delicense them and so on and so forth. Our customer success function delicense them, but now it just like tracks them forever. Like they might go to another organization who is too small for Atrium to matter, right? But then maybe they're out of there in a year and they go to another organization that has like 20 sellers and they're the new, VP of commercial sales, and like getting notified that they landed at that new place is like astronomically important. And so so how you could walk on that functionality would kind of be insane, right? And so like there's always going to be new things. It's kind of like if you run the clock back and say, 10 years ago or like 5 years ago, well, what else do you want, man? You got this like newfangled, cloud CRM, you got this e-sign thing, like you don't even have to fax contracts anymore. And like what you're saying that you need this like sales engagement software to like send emails for you, like what are you, lazy? Now of course, like in retro, now we're like, oh man, like you don't like your sellers or your SDRs don't have sales engagement software, or oh man, you don't have call recording. What are you, nuts? And so I think what's going to happen is you'll just continue to have proliferation of like use cases that are identified. When the use cases are thin, they'll get gobbled up. They'll either get built by incumbents or they'll get gobbled up by those incumbents. Like the Chorus Zoom Info acquisition is like probably a great example there. Like that's not a small acquisition. I forget what it was. Like Zoom Info bought Chorus for like $500 million or something like that, I want to say.
Yep.
Because that's like serious software, right? Like it's not building call recording and conversation intelligence on your own is like not a trivial exercise. And I think that this obviously is this aligns with you guys' like hypothesis, is that like you're probably just going to have more and more of these capabilities that are shipping, and of course they're all going to talk to each other and they're going to like lend themselves to being broken in ways that like requires change intelligence to pay attention to that for you.
Yeah. The thing I'll add there, I think kind of where the direction you're going, while we will have consolidation, which you're already seeing it, everybody's going to start feeling that, I think, more and more, there's still going to be new and emerging tech that comes out. I think one of the cool ones, we use this all the time, Andy and Jason really well at Toriel. I'll put that in the thing. We use Toriel all the time, so we can share that out. But it's funny, that wasn't really a like product tours, like how do you go and use this on your website? Is that something you saw 5 years ago, 6 years ago? No, you signed up for a demo, and that's the only way you got to see somebody's tour or somebody's like product usage. You're seeing more and more of that with like Toriel, Salio. There's a lot of them out there that do this, but that was something new and emerging. And I think if there's anything that I would hang my hat on as far as like a trend that might happen going into the next couple of years, is buyers are more sophisticated. Buyers also have really high expectations of how my customer journey can go. They want it to actually go faster. I'll be honest, if you're a buyer of software, you don't want to necessarily drag out for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months at some of these cycles. Like, no, like if you see value in something, you want to go buy it and use it. That should get you excited. The thing that I think this type of platform and you're meeting your buyer where they want to be met is allowing them to start getting their hands on your product in an interactive tour that's kind of fail-proof, but at least it starts to show functionality. And I think that's going to be a higher and higher expectation. I won't call this company out by name, but some people might laugh. If you've ever bought financial software to a degree, that's not something that you really get to roll your sleeves up and get your hands on. Like if you're buying a new like P&L tool or some sort of new financial software, like you don't really get to trial that. You will go through a demo and you will go through a very long, hour-long conversation, and you'll get paper cut to death with a lot of slides to show that. But I think the buyers now are wanting something different. They're like, no, like hey, let me start my tryout. That's why I think you're seeing some of the PLG motion. Like, let me go use this thing for a little bit. Let me roll my sleeves up and get dirty with it. And then I'll let you know if I want to buy it. I think that expectation is not going to decrease. If anything, it's going to increase. But
yeah. I think it's funny. Like, I think we see that with Atrium, where one of the things that we're really focused on is we get people into a discovery conversation. We talk with them about how they're using data or not, usually not, to better manage their SDR, AEs, et cetera. And then we want to turn on an account. We call it lighting it up. And so we're fairly successful at doing that. But Atrium it's not like Slack and it's not like Zoom where it's just like, oh, this is like so easy. Like it takes a little bit of configuration. That's what our account executives do with customers in a pre-transaction environment. And so then the funny thing, of course, is, but like they've always got these like Zoom, Notion, like Slack mindsets where it's just like, oh, is it done already? Is it done? Can I play with it? Like, are we good to go? And it's like, well, that's just like sending a little like, cat emojis back and forth to each other. Like, this is data-driven sales management software. Like, it's going to take a couple minutes or it's going to take a second to do it. But like, the juice is worth the squeeze. Don't worry. And I think that like, that horse is out of the barn and you're not really going to change that anytime soon. Now, the good news is that I do think that there's a whole, like you were saying, like there's a whole category of emerging stuff that kind of helps with that. So rather than throwing tons and tons and tons of engineering resources at it, you've got the like Toriels of the world, you've got the Reprises of the world, the Novatics, the Walnuts of the world, et cetera, to kind of help with that. But I do think that like the cat is kind of like out of the bag in that regard, and it's going to be difficult to put it back in.
Yes. But the one thing I'll add to that, Atrium, y'all do such a great job of this. You and I did this a couple of weeks ago, even ongoing side, not even a sales cycle, but just in an ongoing coaching and enablement and adoption side. I think the one thing that every company should be focusing on is not necessarily how do you get that initial excitement or that initial aha moment, but keep producing those. And I think you're going to find and see companies using software to go and help them do that. Of course, like additional things like everybody loves creating a good Loom or creating a good walkthrough video that you can go and send. But you still, as a owner of your product, whether you're the founder like you are, or our CSM that we work with at Atrium, or the sales rep that we work with, like still helping your customer produce those aha moments. True story, folks. This is why I absolutely love Pete. I was on with you 3 weeks ago, walking through our instance of Atrium, and Pete's like, hey, you realize you have one of your reps is producing 20% higher ASPs. And the one reason is because they get more multi-threaded than the other reps that you have. I was like, you're right. You still give me that aha moment. Your platform is still helping me coach that, but you still, from a human to human perspective, still help me walk through that. I think that will never go away. We're not robots yet. We also have to go roll up our sleeves and help people understand those aha moments and help them get to them. So,
and I think that, I had a fireside chat earlier today with Jocko Vanderkooi talking about ongoing impact. And now ideally we structure our software to have ongoing impact, but in kind of like supplementing that, making sure that your humans are positioned to provide ongoing impact. And QBRs are all well and good, but like making sure that it's actually impactful as opposed to just kind of like reporting the news and what have you, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, like I said, we launched a new product yesterday. I feel like I need to send a lot of Red Bulls to our CSM team because they are going through every one of our customers, recreating some of that aha moment. Just because you go launch something, you go create this brand new, beautiful widget that's going to solve all the world's problems, you still have to help shepherd that to your customer and help them understand and make sure they know it. And again, those aha moments are gold, man. You talk about the biggest dopamine hit a founder can have is when your customer is like, oh my God, you just saved me so much time, or you just caught me from making this mistake, or you enlightened me by showing me this metric. That's what we're here for. That's what wakes us up, and sometimes subsequently keeps us up at night. But that's what it's all about, right? We're humans. We're not robots quite yet. So I don't know. You're always going to have technology to help subsidize it or help enable it, but it comes down to the strategy that you're still going to be willing to deploy.
Yep. Well, Brad, this is super awesome. We're out of time, so I'll have to let you go. Folks, thank you for joining us. Next week, we're going to have Mike Hoffman. He's a VP of Sales at Spring Health. He's absolutely fantastic. He's formerly a sales leader at CB Insights as well. So, please join us for that. And otherwise, Brad, have a great rest of your week. Okay.
Pete, as always, thank you for having me. Hoffman's a legend. Spring Health's a great customer of ours. You have a great crew for next week, man. But thank you as always. Appreciate you.
Okay. I'll see you, Brad. Bye.